Hello again, my name is Danielle. I'm Anishinaabe from an indigenous community in the United States and Canada. I'm a robotics designer, and it is my first time here in Poland. I have to say, it is a bit warmer than I thought it would be. I thought it would be a lot colder, but I've really enjoyed my time here so far. I'm 23 years old and the founder of a technical educational charity called the STEAM Connection. We help bring free technical educational resources to students through personal and wearable robotics, and we give everything away for free. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about my 5-year journey as a robotics designer, what brought me into robots, some of the issues that impact my community, and why I believe that STEM education is a good thing, which hopefully all of us in this room agree, but sharing a bit about that journey and how all of you can also share it with your own community. So, my slide, oh yeah, in case you didn't see what I look like, there's also a photo of me right here. So, I'm indigenous to North America. A commonly known term is Aboriginal or Native American, but we don't normally prefer words like that. Another is Indian. We prefer indigenous or native or nation specific. We have hundreds and hundreds of tribes in Canada and the United States. Some of them are registered by the government and some of them are kind of on their own, doing their own thing. Basically, we're the first peoples in the general region, so highlighted is where my community, the Anishinaabe, are from. So it covers both Canada and the United States, and it's an emphasis on the Great Lakes region. I grew up, so I'm going to point. I grew up right up here, and it gets about as cold as here. And people have said that I have a crazy Canadian accent because I basically grew up in Canada. But I flew here today from San Diego, California, which is where I'm based, and it's really nice and beachy out there. I really like it. So, I think it's like midnight there right now. But anyways, my people are called the Anishinaabe, and our people are split up into tribes and nations, which have their own governments, policing systems, schools, and more. That's separate from like the federal government of the United States and Canada. It's kind of our own rogue type thing. And as I said, my people are called Anishinaabe, which directly translates to the people. So we're basically calling ourselves First People, right? And most tribe names that you'll find in the United States all translate to just calling ourselves people. My tribe is called the Sault Ste. Marie tribe, which is super French. My community was colonized first by the French, which is why my name is Danielle Boyer. I got a heavy hand of that influence. Basically, I'm something called an enrolled citizen, and I promise all this context will matter. It's kind of nerdy at the beginning, but I'm something called an enrolled citizen, meaning the government has determined that you have enough blood to be considered part of an indigenous community or tribe. So they kind of document you like dogs or horses in the US and Canada to determine your lineage and which community you're a part of. We don't like that type of thing, but it's kind of a political designation as to the community that we are a part of. And it's something that has been part of our community since colonization. But our people are very resilient and have faced continued oppression and genocide, something that not only has happened in the past but still happens to this day. We currently face issues like inaccess to clean drinking water, no access to Wi-Fi, no access to good food, no access to. We also face the highest murder rates, highest dropout rates, highest incarceration rates, all these things. So a lot of these problems impact our community, and our kind of the way that we see the world around us is through these challenges. Our parents and grandparents grew up going to residential schools, which was actually partially what inspired the Holocaust, the treatment of indigenous communities in the United States and Canada. Basically, our culture was forcibly removed from us for many decades and is now something that we currently have to live with. Whenever I give these talks, and the reason why I give talks is because I want to show people around the world that indigenous peoples from this region not only existed in the past, but still exist today, and we're doing a lot of cool things, whether it be with technology or science or things like that. And I want to share some of the inspirations that I have from my culture and my community, and hopefully that can inspire and influence others as well. But many of us live on the land our tribes have designated for us. They're called reservations. Basically, a lot of us don't necessarily live in like cities or things like that. We live in like small areas that the government kind of pushed us off to. That's like the worst part of an area, right? It's like, nah, we don't want to put you near the good lakes or the good land or the good food options. We want to put you in the worst area. So we have a lot of job insecurities and things like that. And a lot of that is out of our control because it was illegal for us to leave the reservations up until pretty recently. But I say all of this because I wanted to give some context as to Indigenous communities. In the US, we don't normally have to give as much context because a lot of people know about the history to an extent. But I carry my people, my culture wherever I go, and it's a big part of the way that I see the world. So I wanted to share a bit about that before I preface this to the robots and the fun stuff, before I nerd out. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. All of that was a bit heavy topic, but I'm gonna talk tech and why I love to do what I do, and I hope some of you guys can resonate. So this here is a photo of me when I was 10 years old. I am the one in the furry bucket hat. I like to think my fashion has improved a little bit since then, but the reason I started teaching when I was 10 years old is because I grew up very poor under the poverty line. There was not access to things in educational opportunities or resources like that. So I remember like reading a lot of comics growing up, especially Marvel comics. I would sit next to my sister and we would read a lot of Iron Man. And she would look at me and she'd say, I want to be a robotics designer. I want to build stuff. I want to be just like Iron Man. And I remember thinking, that's not possible. There's no way for us to learn that. These types of skills are not accessible or whatever, right? Well, I remember seeing a robotics class one day in my community, and it was $500 to participate, which is a lot of money. And for us, that was just something that wasn't doable at all. We had to pay for food, And so we ended up not being able to be a part of that. But at that age, I kind of kept my eye out. I was like, what if I started teaching? Now, I was 10, by the way. 10-year-olds are not good teachers. I remember I was at the store and I saw like finger puppets, and they were of little animals, and it was like a set of them. And I brought my mom over and I was like, Mom, I have an idea. She's like, oh, not again. And I was like, no, trust me. They were animal puppets, and I said, what if I taught an animal science class? Because in my community, a lot of our learning isn't done with books. It's done with storytelling and oral tradition and things that our mother, our grandmother teaches us and tells us, right? So I was like, what if I do the same, but I tell stories about animals? And my mom literally said to me, dude, she said dude to me. She said, dude, you are 10 years old. No. I was like, no, I have an idea, trust me. She should not have trusted me because I ended up teaching a semester-long kindergarten class for 25 kindergartners, which they were like my height, I should not have been trusted with that. But I learned a lot of things the hard way, like don't give kids sugar when you are teaching, don't do things like that. It was not that serious, but I was able to learn a lot about education. Some of the negative sides of it, of like what I grew up with, all of those challenges, those struggles, not having access to education or those opportunities. But then on the other side, I was able to see some of the positive and say, oh, there are positive things we can do. There are ways that I could teach or benefit or impact my community. And that kind of started me on the journey that I'm doing now, where I teach and serve youth with robots. So when I got a little bit older, I joined a program called First Robotics, and it's a global robotics program that helps especially high school age students get involved in building big robots like these, and they compete. It's not battle bots where they fight each other. That's a lot more fun. This is just where they compete and they like throw balls and score stuff and things like that. But the high schoolers actually have to completely build the robot and compete with it. I remember I was so excited because it took me 2 years to be able to save enough money to be a part of the robotics team in my city. There was no aid, no resources like that. And so I had finally saved enough money and I could join the robotics team. But when I got there, I was the only Indigenous person. There was a lot of other people of different ethnicities, but no one from my background. And I was the only girl. So I knew when I was there that it would be kind of difficult. I was really excited though. I was like, it's fine. I will survive. It'll be good. But in the States especially, sexism and things within science and technology are really difficult to deal with. It can lead to stalking, harassment, different things like that. So the circumstances that I was in was very similar, where the guys would tell you that they don't want you to participate, they don't want girls to be there, send mean messages online, like make weird memes of you. But it got so bad and it escalated so much that some of the students were sending drones to my house to look through the windows to spy on me at night, which is so creepy. I never thought that that was like a thing or a problem, but I remember laying back on my couch and like looking up at my window and seeing a red light through the window. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a gun scope. I'm about to get shot. But no, I look up, it was a drone. We ended up having to call police and all these things, and it kept happening again and again. It's very hard to regulate. But that was such a scary experience because to me, I just wanted to learn about science and technology. I wanted to learn how to make things. I wanted to learn how to build things like this. But I was being met with that type of environment where it was very hostile. Unfortunately, now as I work more with other students, this is not a rare experience. Drones. I've met many other students in my similar background and similar age that I was who also get stalked with drones from the guys on the robotics team, which is absolutely ridiculous to me and should not be a thing at all, right? But once I was on that team, I ended up leaving and joining another one, and I was like, the experience is going to be so much better. It was just these people, it'll be good, you know? But I ended up leaving and joining the new one, and the same type of experience happened again, down to even the adults who are in those programs saying, yeah, maybe girls, they're just not supposed to be here. I don't know. And so hearing that all the time was really hard because I didn't just hear that when I was at robotics program, I also heard that when I was at my own home. My dad is an electrical engineer, and he would say the same thing to me. He's like, yeah, maybe it's not meant for you. I don't think you're supposed to do it. It's just not for women. And so those are things that I would hear constantly, on top of there being education inequities, and in my community facing the highest dropout rates out of any other racial demographic. In fact, our dropout rates are 237% higher than that of white students. So hearing all those things kind of again and again was really discouraging. And I was like, well, maybe I'm not meant to do robotics. Maybe I'm not meant to pursue my passions. I remember, though, my grandma, who I'll show a picture of, she is shorter than me, but she is one of the meanest in the best way people I know. She was like, you cannot quit your passions or your interests or your love just because people tell you you can't do it. She smacked me too. I remember that. She was like, you need to get it together and be more confident about it, and you need to go out and you need to help the other students who are experiencing the exact same thing. And so I took her advice and I decided to found my organization. It's called the STEAM Connection. STEAM stands for Science, Tech, Engineering, Art, and Math. Don't ask me why I use acronyms in the names of everything I ever name. Bad idea. People always think it's the gaming platform. I don't know why I did that. So anyways, the STEAM Connection is a youth-led organization. We're all 25 years and younger, and we make technical education, so coding, electrical engineering, computer-aided design, accessible to you through the power of robotics, and we do it completely for free. Basically, our goal is to reach the students who have faced a lot of those inequities in education, or have faced a lot of the issues in poverty or food scarcity or things like that, being able to reach them with education as a way to empower themselves and be able to create better financial prosperity for our communities, which is something that is really important because oftentimes we get stuck in our communities where there's not a lot of good jobs, not a lot of good schools. It can be hard to get out and get good resources, good jobs, things like that. And that is why I created my organization. And if you're on Instagram, you can look and see robot stuff if you're curious. So since 2018, we've reached actually now over 1 million youths. We have these are old numbers, 44,000 educators using our platform, which is like an educational platform to teach STEM. We have distributed over 20,000 small like robotics kits that I invented when I was 18. 100% of everything we offer is free to students and their families, and it's designed 100% by you. So everyone who's created everything is 25 years old and younger, which is kind of crazy. And then recently we integrated an augmented reality app, which has been an interesting technology to work with. It's not necessarily to taken the most seriously, but we were like, let's experiment and see if we can get funding for this and see if people are interested. In the first month of our testing, our augmented reality education app, we had 350,000 users, which we thought was really good numbers. So yeah, we've been experimenting with that in like STEM education, but that's kind of the scope of our impact and the people that we're reaching through these free resources that we create. So I gave a bit about the why and kind of the scope of the impact on Indigenous communities regarding poverty or some of the experiences we've had regarding like colonization or things like that. But I'm going to kind of go inward a little bit to talk a bit about the education. So I mentioned how our students don't have safe and representative learning spaces. So basically, they don't have teachers from their background. They don't have resources that they relate to. A lot of our students, a lot of our families, our first language is not English. Our first language is our Indigenous language. So a lot of the resources aren't even in everyone's language. So there's a lot of gaps there. And that's why our students face the highest dropout rates, not only in the United States, but also in Canada as well. And this can be reflected across many different Indigenous communities across the world. And our students also cannot access the resources that do exist. So there's many cool things out there. There's many cool coding platforms online or cool things to do, right? But only 9% of our native households have personal computers, and even fewer have internet access. In fact, for some of our communities to bring internet hotspots, we actually bring big buses around to be able to bring internet connectivity to rural communities. But even in the cities, our community members have the least access to computers. So getting jobs, studying, doing all these types of things is really difficult for students, and it can be hard for them to be able to get good degrees or even get good grades, because, I mean, how can you even do homework, study, look at jobs, do any of those things without internet, computer, or phone? It can be very difficult. And our students don't have the spaces to learn. So 80% of high schools located in our tribal communities, or as I said before, kind of the areas where the government put us, it's called reservations, they do not offer computer science courses. And so a lot of the public schools in the United States and Canada offer computer science. They offer really great science and tech courses, but in our own communities, we often don't have the funding for it, we don't have the teachers for it, we don't have the resources for it, and that can be very difficult. There's a misconception of Native communities that many people around the world have, especially Native Americans in the United States, that we get a lot of free money or free resources or aid from the government, but that is not true at all. A lot of us live below the poverty line or don't have access to a lot of basic needs. So a lot of us don't get government aid either. We are able to bring in an income through some of our tribal kind of enterprises. So basically our own personal governments, like tribe governments, some of them will have businesses and some of those make money, but a lot of them don't. In my own community, we do not make any money, and I wish we did. So I talked a bit about some of the stats, some of the numbers. I always like to nerd out about the numbers, I'm sure we all do, but to the problems and to the struggles. But there's also a very personal reason why in Indigenous communities we like to solve problems and we like to do things for the betterment of our people, beyond just there being a necessity or a need for it. And it's something called the 7 generations teaching. So it's a teaching many of us grow up with, and it's that everything we do, every decision we make, is for the benefit and for the prosperity of the next 7 generations. But it is with the wisdom and the inspiration and the guidance of 7 generations in the past. So everything we do, every decision we make, is from the guidance of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and it's for the future, knowing that everything we do, we don't just want to make sure that our people have food or water. We also want to make sure that we have the preservation of our culture, of our language, of our ways, of the way that we relate to each other, things like that. And for us, that can be a threat when the basic needs are not met. So if you will meet any Native American person, you will notice that almost every single person is very active, doing a lot for their community, creating things, inventing things. This is a stereotype that a lot of people don't have about Indigenous communities, is that a lot of us are inventors, a lot of us are scientists, and we always have been. Like my community, we invented snowshoes in our region of Canada, and across many Indigenous communities, we've been inventing things, we've been creating things, and I think that's really cool. And it's a tradition that I think is important to bring forward, that our youth know how to create things and know how to solve problems. Because everyone in this room, I think, will agree that when you have, especially like skills as a developer, skills in coding, you are able to empower yourself and you're able to empower those around you. You can make things, you can create things, and you can see problems in a way that a lot of other people don't. You can also bring economic prosperity to yourself. Those are all things that I want to bring to my community because I think it's really important. And I think that if anyone were ever supposed to get a degree or go to school, they should go for software, you know? So there's a lot of good things that tech can help us with and we can empower ourselves with. But there's also a lot of bad things as well, especially impacting my community regarding technology. We in the States see a lot of weaponized tech and surveillance systems on Indigenous communities that the government uses. Like they'll spy on our communities, even though we don't want them to, using different surveillance systems. We see weaponized robotics used in our communities without our consent. Also on the flip side with culture, we see our languages stolen. Language theft is a very big thing in Indigenous communities, as is cultural theft in general. There's a lot of interest from big corporations, especially around the world, in Indigenous knowledge, especially land preservation. Because we take up, I believe, less than 1% of the global population, but we protect 80% of the global biodiversity. So there's a lot of interest in the information and the data we have, and they like to take it. So, for example, there was an organization, where was it? North Dakota in the States. And basically, there is a community called the Lakota, and you might have heard of them, you might have not. Basically, this person who is not Lakota came into the community and he was like, guess what? I'm going to help you with your language. For us, many of us are losing our languages after COVID. We lost many of our language speakers. When you lose your language, you lose your ability to communicate about your culture. You lose many things. And so this man came in and he was like, don't worry, I will help you. I know what a big challenge it is. So he came in and he was recording language resources, writing them down, building it with the community, right? They were helping him. It was a very hands-on process. After that was all done, he copyrighted everything and tried to sell it back to the community, even though it was their own information, languages, and data, which is something that disrupts a concept that we have called data sovereignty, which is the ability to control and choose what we do with our own data. So that doesn't mean just data in general, that's also our languages, that's also depictions of us, it's many things to do with our culture, our foods, our regalias, it's our own information. So we get to choose what we do with that information. And in an age of open AI, there has been a bit of a struggle. So that was a big challenge, seeing that companies were starting to become interested in Indigenous languages, or that they were becoming interested in Indigenous culture. I had a top 10 global company reach out to me and ask, I won't say their name because they could sue me, put a smart speaker, you may know which one I'm talking about, into I make language revitalization robots. So they wanted me to do data collection on Indigenous youth through their smart speakers. And they were offering me almost $1 million to do that. I thought that was very curious that there was that much interest in our data and in our students and in our languages. And that's something that we have to fight in many different ways, as well as kind of on the other end, things like OpenAI pulling a lot of data from the internet. A lot of, if you ask OpenAI questions about our communities, about our languages, a lot of it is inaccurate because it's not made by our communities. It's normally made about our communities, which is very different. So a lot of the language resources, a lot of things that are being made and sold about our communities without us, they're not right. And that happens in many different ways, and why the ethics of AI and data collection are really important. But OpenAI recently created a new platform called Whisper. Basically, they're training language models. One of them was an indigenous language called Mari. And Maori is the Maori community did not consent to them using this information. They did not provide any language resources. Even though it's their own language, they know it best. They know it better than the internet, right? So it's called Whisper, and the model was completely inaccurate. It completely butchered the Maori language. But it's something that people can access and use, and they can actually learn from it. But they're not learning it in the correct way. So we're seeing a lot of data theft, but in weird ways. People want to learn different things, or they want to access our knowledge and our information, but they're going about it in a really strange way where they're kind of not asking us about our own information. They're trying to, they're trying to, oh, I'm good. I didn't lock myself out. That's good. But yeah, so seeing all that interest in our data has been a concerning thing. We've also seen people like this one dude from London came in and used, what is it? I think DALL-E to generate images of indigenous children to make a children's book series. Weirdly enough, the series was about science and technology, but the series was completely inaccurate, told inaccurate stories about our communities, da da da. Seeing all these things and seeing these challenges, we always try to express the importance that the communities themselves know the most about themselves and know how to tell their own stories. They know how to tell, they know how to, illustrate their own things. They don't need AI to do it for them. They can communicate their needs and their wants about language or about things like that. And so seeing a lot of companies come in and try to disrupt that, try to take things from us, it is a very scary thing. So a lot of the reason why I like to teach technology to kids is not just because I think tech is a powerful and awesome and exciting thing, because it is. I also like to see I don't like to, but I see the negative sides as well, and the dangerous sides, and the sides of government and corporations coming against us, and how we can support our communities and uplift our ways, even throughout all of those things. So that's kind of the overall of why I make robots. And that's a lot of context. But I think context like that is important because all of us have, I think, a connection to these types of issues of information or things that we want to protect or keep safe, or ways that we want things to be conveyed, or even if our own connection is in AI and we're developers ourselves, being able to look at the biases that we have when we are creating things and when we are putting stuff out into the world, the impact that it can have on communities that we might not know it does, right? So that's kind of why I wanted to share a bit about that. So my organization surveyed 50 leaders in indigenous communities, and our results revealed that only 4 possessed a comprehensive grasp of AI risks, and merely 1 was able to leverage it for a positive outcome. So that one guy is like an AI expert at Amazon, so I don't know if he counts. But seeing these numbers is a scary thing because it's not just about the kids and making sure they know about technology and AI and all the good and the bad. It's also our leaders and our government knowing about the risks and knowing about the positive things or how we can use it for economic prosperity or things like that. Kind of understanding all those things, because fear-mongering AI is not a good thing either. We can use it for our benefit. We can create cool things. So it's how can we find that middle ground, and how can we communicate it then to not only people who are in business or who are in political figures, but how can we even communicate it to people like my grandmother, who's terrified of technology and robots and things like that? How can we find that middle ground? And in my community, we found a middle ground through this little guy right here. So this is called a SCObot, and it's a robot that I invented. And SCO is are reservation slang for let's go. So we'll say like skoden, which is let's go then. And it's not a word in our languages, it's like a slang, right? So we made Scobots, which are language revitalization robots. Basically, they're small personal robots, and they can communicate with you in endangered indigenous languages. Because estimates suggest that by the year 2050, which every time I say that stat, it feels closer, it's estimated that I believe only 20 indigenous languages will remain by then in the United States. That is a really scary problem for us because there's hundreds of tribes, hundreds of communities. What are we supposed to do if we lose all this information, all of this, our own data, right? And so that's why we created these robots, to be able to recognize English and Spanish words and respond in the endangered indigenous language. My language is Anishinaabe-Moan. And so the robot can actually speak to you in Anishinaabe-Moan. So basically, I can say hello to it, it will hear it, and it will say in my language, bonjour, which is hello, back. People point out the similarities between bonjour and bonjour, which we did get colonized first by the French, so I think that is where that influence comes from. Our non-formal hello is ani, so we'll say ani bonjour. So when I say hello to the robot, I can say ani bonjour back, but it does it in little kid voices. So it's not just like some robotic voice or something that we made ourselves. We actually recorded hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of phrases by young indigenous children to speak back in the robot with the little kid voices. Because we wanted to bridge that gap of the good side of technology, the scary side of technology, but something that was approachable so that especially our older community members could look at robots like these and be like, oh my gosh, that's not that scary. They're just little cute robots and they're like this big, you know? So it's something that is a good foot in the door for the good uses of technology. But yeah, the robot itself, it's 3D printed out of recycled PLA, which is polylactic acid. It's a bioplastic. It's an iffy plastic in terms of recyclability or the biodegradable aspects of the material. But we 3D print and design the robots ourselves, and they also feature cultural elements to them. So a lot of our communities have things like beadwork or have specific florals unique to our communities, outfits, we call regalia, things like that, right? And so we're able to bring all of those elements together and create it something that is recognizable for our students when they look at it. Because a lot of our students, when, as I said before, are walking into classrooms or in spaces where they don't see themselves represented or don't see examples of themselves reflected, having a robot like this can make a really big difference because the students know that it was created for them. And oftentimes we create it with them as well because most of our team are under 18 years old who help with our actual design process. But the robot is also wearable as well, which is a random fun fact. And I don't know why I did that. I just thought it was fun. It's wearable with a GoPro strap. So you can strap the camera strap onto it and you can wear the robot. Because of Wi-Fi connectivity issues, we have two different versions of the robot. One that uses AI you can communicate with, and then the other one that operates with the PIR sensor in the center, and it's motion-based. That is not as good to use for language learning, but in some circumstances, it's easier when we don't have access to language tools. The other robot that I created of I wouldn't say similar effect, but it's kind of the first step for kids to build robots in general, is this robot. It's another acronym because I wasn't crazy enough. It's called Every Kid Gets a Robot, or EKGR, and it's a robot that costs less than $20 to make and goes to kids completely for free. Excuse me. So basically what it is the kids are able to assemble, wire, program it using ESP32 development boards. We also run Arduino IDE on it, which is Java, C, and C++. So the kids are actually able to get in and learn some really good programming languages and learn a lot about design and stuff, even though it's such a simple robot. But for a lot of our communities, they can't even afford $20 or $10, right? You can't afford even inexpensive robots. So we make everything and we send them out for free, and we've sent out 20,000 free robots now. And I make them out of a storage unit in San Diego. It's it's the unit laying down is as long as me, and then high it's two of me. So it's like it's a tiny unit, and I make all of the robots out of there myself. I invented this when I was 18, kind of like a unique chassis design, which is the body of the robot, how all the components kind of fit well on it. And yeah, I make everything out of a storage unit, and I hand count each screw, which is ridiculous. I don't know why I do all that, but we really wanted to make sure that the STEM resources, they get out to the kids, and they get to them fast and for free. So now I can make 150 robots in like half a day. So that's usually, if I'm not replying to emails or ignoring people, that is normally what I'm doing, is building robots, which is like my full-time job, actually. Um, so going back a bit to the Scobots, we really wanted to think about, so as I said before, my community, we're called the Anishinaabe. We wanted to think about what Anishinaabe toys could look like in the future. And I think the word toy is a lot more approachable than robot. The word robot is cooler, but toy really helps our community members see an approachable use of technology that's not scary or intimidating. As like when you see things like BattleBots online, or you see things like Boston Dynamics, it can be easy, I think, to be frightened. Maybe not all of us in this room. I see Boston Dynamics and I get excited. I got to tour there recently. Oh my gosh, they just have robots roaming around in the hallway. It's so cool. There's hundreds like sleeping in rows, and they have fun experiments where they'll heat them up in ovens to see how hot they can handle. They'll freeze them to see the coldest temperatures they can handle. And they run each part in the robot independently, like the moving mechanisms, until they completely tire out. All of those things are, in my robot nerd brain, super exciting. But yeah, those types of robots can be very scary to people who don't understand a lot of the uses of technology. They don't know that you can just kick one of the spot robots, the yellow dog robot, and it will stop working and its battery will fall out. So they don't know those things. So it can be hard to communicate the good things of tech without something to make it approachable, you know? I realize I am nearly out of time. But these here are kind of use cases of the robots, them being wearable, approachable, fun, and is a way for our youth. I mean, all of us, when we were younger in school's not that fun, you know? For some of our kids, learning indigenous languages, it is vital and it's necessary, but when you're young, you don't always want to learn things. So the robots can be a good way to implement approachable language learning in the classrooms and things like that. And so they're so cute. The kids decorate them, they put skirts on them, they deck them out in the craziest ways. And as I said before, everything is 3D printed. Eventually I'd like to injection mold, but for now every single robot is unique, which is like a horrible manufacturing plan. And if any of you know anything about 3D printing, you know that this shape is a horrible shape for 3D printing. But in my head, I was really confident. I was like, but it's cool, you know? I don't know why I was doing all that. But basically, we manufacture it in the way that we do so that every single community that we work with can have a robot unique to them and to their community and their culture. Because as I said earlier, there's hundreds and hundreds of indigenous tribes and communities, so each design needs to look very different to reflect us, because otherwise there's no point. Just saying you're Native American or indigenous, that doesn't mean anything. It means something only when we're talking about the specific community in the specific region. Otherwise, we get something, and the word is super specific, but it's called pan-Indianism. It's basically meaning grouping us all into one, which happens a lot. Like, you'll see especially in like Germany, they'll do a lot of weird pan-Indian powwows, which are like gatherings to dance and things. And they're not indigenous either, so they'll just do it for fun, but it's very weird to see those types of things and see weird representation, and you'll see weird uses of our culture and clothes practices kind of all around the world. And so that's why it's important to talk very specific about like the community that you mean and things like that. And I'm going to show some pictures of the robots because they're very cute. But this is one of the Scobots. It was inspired by Hello Kitty. I really like Hello Kitty, and I like, and it was inspired by like Tron as well, like the original one. We like to have a lot of fun when we're designing the things and bringing some of the nerd components into it, but as well as culture. These here are called jingle cones, and basically they're rolled tin lids that we put on our dresses. And this is a style that actually came from my community. So when you dance, everything like jingles together and it sounds really, really cool. But then we also put it on the robot, so when the students see it, they can say, oh wow, like I connect to that. I dance too, and the robot can as well, you know? And the robot moves around and stuff like that. And then these are ones the students have decorated. I don't know if you can tell from this one, but this one has a six-pack. I did not decorate that, the kids did. And this was after COVID, so this one has like a pack of hand sanitizer on it. They're really paranoid, and this one has muscular arms. But the kids, sometimes they decorate them in weird ways, and it's fun to see the kids resonate with science and tech. Because again, for us to have the highest dropout rates, we also have the highest rates of underperformance in math. And it has nothing to do with capability or desire or interest. It has to do with not relating to those subjects and not seeing themselves in it. So by showing examples like this and then showing the kids, oh, you can wire it, you can build it, that's a really cool thing. Before students build our little robots, we give them a technical exam, questions on wiring and coding and things like that. So we ask them the questions, and they get an average of like an 18% when they start the exam. After, though, they build the robot, they take the exam again, they get an average of an 88%. So we're able to see a lot of the measured STEM ability increase in a very measurable and also considerable way. So it's exciting to see examples like this, even though it looks very silly, right? The kids are able to connect with it, and we're able to see those positive tech use applications. And we're also able to see artificial intelligence used in a kind of funny way. I have never seen artificial intelligence used in a way, like packaged like this, except for maybe, I don't know if you follow Grimes, Elon Musk's, for lack of a better word, baby mama, I guess. But she made an AI toy, like it's a plushie, and I think it's basically ChatGPT in a toy, and it talks to your kids, which I don't know how I feel about that, but that's the most similar thing I can think of, and hopefully, I think it's a little bit more of a terrifying context. This one here is these students are indigenous to Mexico, which is close to where I live, and this robot is called a Nawa, which is their community name robot, and they actually decorated it and drew everything themselves, and I think that's super cute and fun. They're a part of the only tribal school, which is in the city of Los Angeles. A lot of people don't know that Los Angeles actually has a tribal school, but they're there, and they are one of the best run schools I've ever seen. They do a lot of like gardening efforts, land restoration efforts. They're trying to bring green spaces to Los Angeles. A lot of the work that we do in general as Indigenous peoples is making sure that the land around us, the world around us is treated well and taken care of. And I especially see this example with these students as well. And several of them have actually helped with the design of these robots themselves. This one here is made of resin, which is not a practical material, just fun. If any of you are in materials and want to nerd out about that later, come find me, because I would love to talk about it. But that's kind of what the inside looks like with our Arduino Uno version. This was the inspiration, actually, was Talking Elmo. Basically, it talks, and it's kind of terrifying. And we were like, what if it spoke Indigenous languages? So we were inspired by this. I don't like its face, but we were inspired by it, and then we were able to create this version. It was inspired by a researcher. Her name is Cynthia Brazil, and she's from MIT. She is in their MIT Media Lab, and she is an expert in personal robotics. She makes terrifying robots, which you have to Google. They have human fingers. It's weird. Basically, she did research that says if the robots have a face or something that kids can look at or resonate with, then it can help prevent developmental delays and kids will actually learn from it. So we were going a bit out on a limb with this face. It was not inspired by a minion, but people think it was. But we brought it to a powwow, as I said, like a dance gathering, and we saw babies looking up at the robot, and like their eyes would go wide and they would stare at it. And little kids would come up to us and ask if it played Spider-Man music. So seeing that the robot actually connected with kids was really an exciting thing, also for the product design process. And this is part of the manufacturing process. I'm going to speed up because I could yap for ages, but I will hustle with it. If anyone is curious about the stuff that I'm up to or about product design, endangered languages, our language models, robots, personal robots, anything like that, feel free to email me. I'll reply in 1 to 2 business months. No guarantees. I'm usually on the road a lot. After this, I'm headed to Ghana. I just came from London. I travel a lot to talk about robots and things like that. You can also learn more at my website if you want to see some of the specific stuff, or even if you're curious about bringing some of the robots to your own community. We do international work as well with the robots. You can also find me online. I post a lot of nerdy stuff about 3D printing, robots, all that type of stuff. I like to post most on Instagram if anyone is curious. So in my language, our word for thank you is miigwech. So miigwech, thank you. And if anyone has any questions afterward, I'm going to take a nap, but after the nap, I will be around because I was up all night writing a grant. So anyways, thank you for hearing me out. I know that this type of topic is very niche and specific and is maybe hard to relate to in some ways, but I appreciate you hearing me out and hearing more about my opinions on hopefully things that relate to some of your experiences in technology. So miigwech, thank you.